So in Apollo's mind, with his pride and his idea of I'm a warrior, I think fighting this Russian was his way of making that contribution to this is how I fight the enemy.
Ironically, he's named after the god of healing, which I think is funny. Welcome back to the Movies Are Spiritual podcast. Doug is about to tell us what his fourth favorite movie of all time is and why it is spiritual. What will it be?
You know what it is. And I promise I didn't do this on purpose. This just happens to be my fourth favorite movie, which is the best fourth sequel movie ever.
Fourth sequel?
Rocky IV.
I got a clue now.
Rocky IV. Yes, Rocky is a better movie. Before anyone says anything, the original Rocky is a better movie than Rocky IV. But Rocky IV, again, came out at a time when, and I'm still proud of America, still proud to be an American, but in the 80s, it was America versus Russia. It wasn't long after the Miracle on Ice, and we were Russia bad, America good. And yeah, of course, everyone loved Rocky, Rocky 2, Rocky 3, and then they decided to do a Rocky 4 about fighting against a Russian. And of course, the Russian cheats, and he's this big ultra human that no one can beat and should beat. First of all, that's why I loved it as a kid. To kind of give you an idea about it, unfortunately, my parents did divorce when I was in grade school. So I was with my mom one weekend, my dad the next weekend. And whenever I was with my dad, he would always take us to Seymour Cable TV in Westville. And we were each allowed to rent one movie. I'm not kidding. If we went there 50 times, I probably picked Rocky IV 45 of them. I don't know why, but I just loved this movie as a kid. And again, that age, I promise you I could have quoted every single line of that movie along with the movie. Probably didn't even need the movie playing. I hold it close to my heart. Brings back great memories. Again, it's just a fun movie, which is pretty much 50%
It really is.
music video. This came out in 85, so it came out right around the same time as Top Gun, and a lot of movies were like that, a lot of montages, and this movie starts with a montage, and then just montage.
It's an hour and 20 minutes of montage.
Montages, pretty much. That's the way movies were made back then, so it's fun.
It's under 2 hours.
Hour and 31 minutes.
It goes fast. It's like, it's over before you know it, but it's such a ride. It is so good.
Rocky IV was still that good?
Dude.
It was. Again, it was fun.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem with Hollywood. I'm going to go off on a tangent here for a second. I apologize. But I think that's what the problem is with movies nowadays is you rarely see movies that are just fun. And ironically, the most modern movie I can think of with just being fun, other than the Top Gun Maverick, are the Expendables movies. And, it has Stallone in it. And I appreciate the deep movies, don't get me wrong. But it's like every movie has to have a twist. Every movie has to have a meaning. Every movie has to have a message. And nobody just makes movies that are fun. You can look at that with Top Gun 2. Maverick, it's a fun movie. There is no message. There's no this. There's no that. It's just like good versus bad. And movie exploded, blew up, just beat everything. Hopefully people take notice of that and bring back the fun movies. And I shouldn't say that's the only one. The Ghostbusters Afterlife, fun movie. There are a few still out there, but
Thor Ragnarok?
That was a fun
Thor Ragnarok.
That was fun.
Fun movie. Yeah, the first two Thor movies I enjoy, but they had fun with Ragnarok, and you could tell, and that movie was great. It's probably one of my favorite Marvel movies.
They had fun with Violent Night. I told you, my wife and I just went and saw that, and like I said, I enjoyed every second of it. It was over the top. It didn't have that deep meaning. It was just strictly Santa Claus happened to be in a house that was getting robbed. What's he gonna do? He's gonna go all Die Hard on him. It was just fun. Nice. It was like, this is what I want. I'm gonna pay money. Entertain me. So
right.
Oh, so question. Spiritually, what is it that draws us to a fun movie like that? Is it the escape? Is it that we kind of want to get outside of
Absolutely.
the messed up world we're living in for a little bit?
Yeah.
And just for the next 2 hours, I'm going to sit here and I'm just going to enjoy its escape from everything else. Just here you go, 2 hours, enjoy it.
I agree 100%. I have to be in a mood to sit down and watch a serious movie. Let's say something like American History X. Great movie, but I can't go back and watch that year after year. You know, it's probably been 5 years since I've ever, even seen parts of that movie. Great movie, but not a fun movie. There were definitely, a lot of themes and things like that, and the themes they were trying to say, racism bad, I agree with. But yeah, I don't have to prepare to see Top Gun, Top Gun Maverick, all these fun movies. I don't have to prepare to watch Rocky 4. All I have to do is be like, I'm bored. Oh, let's watch Rocky 4. It's fun. And it will get me out of this world for an hour and a half, and that's great. So I think
You
that's
mean
what
like Batman and Robin?
Yeah.
Well, the other thing about what makes, and we've mentioned this several times on these podcasts, because somehow Rocky always gets brought up. The thing with Rocky movies is they're fun movies, especially, okay, so 4 is a little different than the first two. The first two have a little bit more of a serious, and I guess in the first 3, they have a little bit more of a serious tone to them. I mean, there's still some comedy in it. There's still a little funny lines, but it's more along of the lines of a drama. And then Rocky 4 comes out. I mean, they don't waste time with long, drawn-out scenes. It moves. And like you said, there's a lot of montage with some excellent – that's another soundtrack that would make my top 5 soundtracks. It just –
Yeah, we'll probably have the same top 5.
the music is so good. The story is so good. And what makes Rocky 4 a little different than the other ones is I think just how a little bit more like lighter it is than the first 3. I mean, Rocky still faces his troubles, but it's not – there's some down parts in the first 3 where it kind of gets a little slow and it kind of draws it out. And Rocky 4 just is like, oh, Rocky's sad. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to train hard. Okay, then they start doing a montage again. But it doesn't – it still has that inspirational messaging that all the other Rocky movies had. There's always this inspirational part of every movie. And Rocky 4 still has it about losing a friend, and I gotta overcome my grief, and I've got to, and how he pops himself up and the support that he gets. And it just makes you feel good. You are so pumped up when you get done watching a Rocky movie that you could just go out and do anything. Honest to God.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was going to ask. What exactly is the spiritual theme behind this movie? Because I haven't seen it, and I imagine there was going to be a big fight, so it's got to be about overcoming some insurmountable obstacle. But now there's a grief element, apparently. Tell us what the spiritual themes in this movie might be.
Kind of run through the movie real quick. Rocky is retired the champion, and the new big name coming around the circuits is this guy from Russia named Ivan Drago, played by Dolph Lundgren, a very young Dolph Lundgren. At that point, I don't know if he'd been in much, but Dolph Lundgren is this Swiss actor who's about 6'4". When you stand next to 5'6" Stallone or 5'7", that makes him look huge, and he is huge.
Right?
He's a world champion kickboxer in real life.
Very smart.
He's a genius. He's got 2 or 3 degrees in rocket science or something like that from MIT. Speaks like 9 different languages. Can play the drums. Breaks stuff. Yeah, just he's everything. So he plays this Russian. This Russian wants to fight Rocky because it's I want America's champion, but Rocky's retired. But for some reason or another, Rocky's friend Apollo, who became friends with in part 3, says, well, I'll fight Ivan Drago, and it'll just be kind of it'll be a celebrity fight. Well, during the fight, he ends up dying. Ivan Drago is so powerful, he kills Apollo Creed. There's a few different scenes where they talk about it, but a lot of it is about him overcoming grief. In Rocky 3, he lost his manager of
It was kind of like a father figure to him too.
Yeah, very much so. He had to move past that in part 3, and then he thinks, okay, I'm finally where I need to be, and now he just lost another friend. So again, it's him dealing with that grief and what he's going to do moving forward to get past it. At the end, like most Rocky or most Stallone movies, it almost feels like, but definitely most Rocky movies, he gives a speech. And it's a great speech. He talks about how during the past couple hours, there are 2 guys in this ring killing each other, but that's better than 20 million. He's talking about how we found something, figured something out during this fight. Because again, you gotta look past the overreaching of this or whatever. But during the fight takes place in Russia, surrounded by Russian soldiers. You got the Politburo up there with a guy who's supposed to be Gorbachev watching this. And throughout the match, people in the stands start chanting for Rocky. And by the end of the movie or end of the match, everyone's cheering for Rocky to come back and win because he's fought back so many times. He's been knocked down 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and yet he still gets up and he's still fighting. The entire crowd, the entire Soviet Union's like, Rocky, Rocky. But anyway, it's a good speech where he's talking about how he saw people change, and it's like, we are just people. We shouldn't be at war like this. I saw people change here, and while I've been here, I've changed. And if I can change, you can change. Everybody can change. And the whole crowd goes wild. And it was kind of a cool speech because in '85 we were still very
Cold War
into it with Russia. It was a Cold War thing, and it was great watching America beat Russia. But he gives this speech at the end where it's like, come on, haven't we fought enough? We can change as people and try to find a nice, happy medium. And that's a great speech for them. And that's a great speech for now. If you watch that, it's like there's so much separation with politics, with religion, with social media, with everything. And it's like, look, we have to try to figure out a way, not just say you're wrong and you're wrong. We got to find a way to come together and we can all change to make things better. So I think that was a great message and a movie that is just a fun movie. But Stallone, being the great writer he is, he can find a way to even take a fun movie and have a very positive
I still,
message.
to this day, believe that ended the Cold War.
I was about to say, ironically, a couple years later, they were tearing down the Berlin Wall.
Well, that's probably part of the culture bleeding into the writing of that movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Because there were probably more people feeling that way.
Yeah, the whole 80s, growing up in the 80s as a kid, and you go outside and you play, and if you're playing Army, who is your enemy? Who are you fighting? You're fighting the Russians. That was it. They were the bad guys. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of movies that came out in the 80s about that. What is it? Red Dawn. That was high school kids taking on the Russian army in Colorado. But you were always afraid that you were going to get into a war with Russia. That was, like in the 60s, it was the Cubans. They had Russian missiles pointed at us from Cuba. Everybody was afraid of that. And you get into the 80s, and you still had that fear a little bit of Russians were bad guys. They made a Russian bad guy in the WWF. They had 2 of them.
2 of them.
So, yeah, it was definitely kind of part of the culture at that time to do a movie where it's going to be the bad guy. But like Doug said, it was interesting because instead of fighting a war and using this violence to end our differences, there's other things that we can do to try to look past that and coexist. It's a great message.
Yeah, where I see that as a spiritual concept is like we're designed to be together with other people, but with God too, right? And that's kind of what Eden was all about. Mm-hmm. So now this is people in the movie looking around, realizing we're all divided into this us versus them thing, kind of like we are today, and saying, hey man, this is not the way it's meant to be. This is not the ideal. And so it sounds like they try to do something to bring people back together towards the ideal. Yeah, that's a pretty deep spiritual concept, I think. Mm-hmm. That's kind of tied to man's purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love Stallone's writing. I mean, he can write certain types of movies just very, very well. Even when it's an hour and a half music video, he can still get a positive message in there. And that's the thing, you got to look at it is like, this wasn't a 100% Go America movie. It is, he's American, Russia, we beat the Russians, and I get that, but it ends up being a, let's come together. It's not we win, it's let's stop winning, let's all win, let's all bring it in. That message then resonates just as strongly today, whether we said politics, whatever. We got to stop being this far apart and bring it a little bit closer. We've got to talk more and stop yelling less. It's easy for me to say that. I get it, but that's what the message is.
Even earlier in the film, there's a part where Apollo comes to Rocky and he's telling him, like, I'm going to fight the Russian. I'm going to fight this guy. He's coming over here all arrogant. I'm going to show him what it's really like. And Rocky keeps trying to talk Apollo out of it. Like, yeah, we're not young anymore. Maybe we shouldn't do this. And Apollo even makes the thing. He goes like, don't you see what I'm talking about here? This is us versus them. This is like, even Apollo had that. We're in America. He's coming over here, us versus them. And that was kind of a theme through the whole movie. And even Rocky, I'm avenging my friend. I'm going to go over there. He's the enemy. We're going to fight it out this way. Yeah, and by the end of the movie, Rocky's even thinking, like, this fight that we just had is meaningless. Like, there's no point in this. I came over here for one reason, but I changed. That's not the reason that I should be here.
Throughout the fight, I saw a lot of changes. Yep.
Did Apollo die, like in movie logic, because he went into that fight with this wrong, destructive motivation?
That, and he danced
for 5 minutes. He came out and did a big show with James Brown, living in America, and he's dancing and he's putting on a show and getting real cocky and arrogant.
And it's seriously like a 4-minute scene, a 3-minute scene. He's up there.
He had no energy when he got in the ring. But the thing is he underestimated his enemy.
And, he was in his 50s, right?
Yeah.
Or at least 40s.
And he underestimated Drago's strength. And he thought that this was just going to be an exhibition fight. And Drago didn't come to play around. He was actually going to hit. And he lays into Apollo and basically just punches Apollo until he's dead. And Rocky had even contemplated throwing the towel. He was going to throw the towel, and he told Apollo, I'm going to stop this fight. And Apollo was like, you're not stopping anything. You're not stopping anything. I'm doing this.
No matter
and that was,
what.
And I think what that looks more is that's just pride. That was Apollo's pride that killed him. Earlier in the film, in that same scene where he's talking about us versus them, he was talking about being a warrior. We're warriors. This is what we do. And you can't just tell a warrior that he can't fight anymore. This is our life. And we always have to look forward to that next thing. Like, you can't just turn it off. So in Apollo's mind, with his pride and his idea of I'm a warrior, I think fighting this Russian was his way of making that contribution to, this is how I fight the enemy. This is my way of doing it. Yeah, it killed him.
Yeah, I was looking up, ironically, he's named after the god of healing, which I think is funny. I was like, I know that's a Greek god. I wondered if there was something that led to his
pride
destruction.
Got him. His pride basically killed him.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Which is one of the 7 deadly sins, right?
Good theme I never really thought of. Yeah, his pride did get him killed.
Yeah, when you're watching that dance in the movie, then like this character has to die by screenwriting logic.
When I saw it, see, this is another movie I saw in the theaters. Right. So and at this point, I don't think I had actually even seen the original Rocky at this point. I may have seen parts of them, but I hadn't actually sat down and watched them. So Rocky 4 was like the first one that I really got into. And it was the same thing. I mean, we would go home, my cousins and I would go home and reenact the fight scenes at the end, where we're, okay, I'm Rocky this time and I get to beat you up, We never did that fight. We always did the Drago fight. Nobody wanted to play dead. But
okay.
So I didn't think that he was going to die. I guess I didn't really even think about it when I was a kid watching it. I guess if I had seen the other 3, you could kind of foreshadow that this is going to be the reason that Rocky has to go fight.
There's a nice little family moment in there too, because, after Apollo dies, Rocky wants his revenge, like Drew said, and he has a moment with his wife where she's just like, you can't win. She's obviously scared for Rocky's life because, Apollo had just died and, they're about the same age, so it's like, look, you can't do this. You got a family. You can't leave us alone. And he's like, I'm a fighter. I got to do this. And he goes to Russia to train. She doesn't go to start off with, but halfway through the training montages, that's plural, she does come. And she's like, look, I'm your wife. I'm here to support you
no matter what.
No matter what. And
no matter what.
No matter what. That's straight from the movie. That's a nice little theme in it, too, is the fact that, look, okay, I don't want you to do this. I'm scared for you. But if you feel this is something you have to do, I'm your family. I'm here to support you. So, that's a nice spiritual theme in there as well.
That's pretty deep. Like, I can see forgiveness in there, too. And if you think about it, I mean, it would take a pretty high character wife to do that, to support you doing something that maybe was a bad idea, right?
It was, yeah.
And this was a bad idea.
Yeah, Rocky's motivation wasn't the best. And she still decided to put her own feelings aside and support him. That's pretty rare character. And yeah, I think that's a pretty deep spiritual theme too. I mean, that's putting someone else first when you think they're doing something bad.
What's interesting about the Rocky movies is the progression of Adrian's character also. From the first movie to this movie, she is a different... Yeah. You see her grow. In the first movie, she's really quiet, shy, doesn't say much. She starts to kind of come out of her shell in the second one. The third one, she actually starts getting a voice. She'll tell Rocky when something's not right. And then by this one, she's just like, I ain't messing around. This is a horrible idea. And
yeah, she's singing along with Rocky.
This is a do. But she's finally at this point telling him this is a horrible idea, And I think the you can't win. I used to look at that like, oh, what great support there, Adrian. But when she's thinking about it, even if you beat this guy, you might not have won anyway because of the damage you're going to do to yourself. So you're kind of in like a no-win situation. You beat him, what's your side effects going to be? Which we find out in Rocky 5, it's brain damage.
Very much so.
Like doctors said, you shouldn't have done that fight. But so she becomes more of a voice of reason for him because he didn't have that from her in the first. She was always devoted to him, but she just kind of went along with things. Yeah. And then she finally started saying, this is ridiculous. She actually gives the motivational speech in the third one. So, yeah, it's a good movie.
If you really want to, I mean, she gives a great motivational word in the second one when she comes out of the coma. Win. What are you waiting for? Take us! Absolutely. So, yes, Rocky 4, close to my heart. Yep, great movie. Fun.
I can see why you picked it.
Absolutely.
Well, listeners, you're going to have to guess now what is Doug's third favorite movie of all time going to be.
And it has nothing to do with the number 3, I promise.
All right, well, stick around. Our next podcast will be on his third favorite film. See you soon.